Hey guys, Saber and Suvir here, and we're going to be talking about a bit about West Coast PM and what you should be expecting from West Coast PM, as well as what's happened in the past few months. In general, with the coronavirus and everything being shifted to net play, there hasn't been much like activity per se, but there still is some exciting stuff we want to talk about that happened right before coronavirus, during the net play and P Plus 2.0 release, and then about what we're going to be doing going forward in West Coast PM. So you could say hi, Ryan. I guess I'm sure everyone knows you who's watching this video.
Yeah, hey everyone, how's it going?
So I guess what we can really first start talking is about what happened right before coronavirus, really the beginning of the year of 2020, because I think there was some exciting stuff going on at that time, but it kind of went under the radar for some people, especially like if they weren't in our region or in the area. Two events that were like pretty big scale on the West Coast were probably the reunion and Redacted City. I think those were probably the two biggest West Coast events.
Yeah.
So I guess we could start with the reunion. I mean, well, I guess it was basically started with an idea that I had where it's like, let's try and get all these people from SoCal who haven't shown up in years to just come and, we'll do something at UCLA, which is where I go to school, and we'll try and get people to come back and just play for one day, have a good event. And I wasn't expecting it to be the scale that it was, but we did have a lot of people show up.
Blew up.
Yeah.
We had 77 people, which is the biggest SoCal only, functionally SoCal only. I came back for it, but I considered myself SoCal, especially at the time. But 77 players from just SoCal, which is the largest SoCal only event that we've had in easily since the Belk days. Probably since the first Busters and Bandits, and just insanely stacked.
Yeah, and I think key things to note is we had so many inactive or retired players just come back. Like Sosa, for the first time since 2018, really, we saw him at the event, even though he was a bit out of shape at the time. But like he still came back, he competed and had a lot of fun. We saw Jay Falls, Strong Bad, Nation.
Nation went on a monster run.
Yeah, Nation did very, very well for probably, I don't know how much he played before that, but
not at all.
Not at all, and that's like the Nation special kind of where he just shows up, does well without practice.
Strong Bad hasn't competed since like 2017, so his first event in 3 years, made top 8. He still got it.
Yeah,
we had a lot of hitters show up.
Yeah, and we did have our usual SoCal crowd that was there. Like we got to see kind of how our up and comers and lower PR who. People think SoCal is kind of dead after the bout days, but we saw our current PR do quite well at the event. And we also had Young Quaff have his first event as the reunion in SoCal, and he placed second, I think.
He placed second. We had Nez win the whole event, dropping one game in either bracket. He won doubles with me without losing a game, and then dropped one game to Quaff and Grands. So,
yes.
New school SoCal definitely showed up.
Yeah, so Nez did very well. You did very well as well.
Yeah, I hadn't been playing, and I played for like 2 weeks leading up to the event, and I got fifth. Manny, who's like kind of new school, I guess. He's been around for a long time, but he really leveled up in the last year and a half or so. He made top 8, and then El Shrumo, who's was one of our new up-and-coming players and is now on the East Coast. He got 9th, as did Schmoofy, who's another one of our newer stars.
Yeah, and I think in general, for me, running an event like that and competing was really fun. And we got to see, basically, for new school people like me, it's like the first time you see a lot of these people in action. And so it was a stressful day, but we had a lot of fun, and I think that event was something that may have gone under the radar for a lot of people. It was probably the biggest SoCal event, as you said, since the bout days. So it was amazing how it happened.
Yeah.
So
And I will note that prior to that, just because we're kind of going through events that were impactful for people on the West Coast, NorCal also had a pretty significant event the week before, which was at Genesis 7.
oh yeah, the Neon Genesis, whatever they call
Yeah,
it.
I don't know what Genesis they're on now. It was the side event at Genesis. It basically had all of the NorCal PR plus me and Teals there. And so we had some big upsets. I beat Boiling Man, which again I hadn't really been playing, so I have no idea how that happened. Potatoes Are Yum, who is an up and coming NorCal PR player, beat both me and Teals in losers. So he was kind of on his way to having a breakout at the beginning of the year before obviously COVID happened. I think aside from that, everything went pretty much as expected. Those were kind of the big upsets.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think events like that do go under the radar for some people, so it's cool to be able to highlight them. I think the one that probably isn't that big under the radar, but like people probably know that Redacted City still happened, and I can tell just by how popular the YouTube VODs are and stuff like that. Ran in Washington, and I think it had a lot of the NorCal PR as well as some out of region and as well as in region people, but it was probably like one of the most recent P plus majors that could happen before COVID hit, and so
yeah, it was the last big in person COVID event, and also definitely one of the biggest and most stacked events that we've had in since Encore probably. Definitely a sick event to really close out the year on 3 months in, however long ago it was.
Yeah, so I mean, at Redacted City, I do think the grand finals was really exciting between Thunders and Doctor. We saw a few like hype sets happen in pools too. I think Zeddy had a close set with the Doctor.
Yes, we had the two players that ended up in grands almost lost in pools. The Doctor almost lost to Zeddy, who's a Washington Game & Watch, and Thunders actually almost lost to Fashum, who is the sickest BDD that no one who's not on that play knows about.
Yeah. And then I also think Ivan had a close set with Bookkeeper from what I've heard.
Ivan did have a close set to Bookkeeper. And then the only top player who actually got upset would be Young Quaff actually lost to Shockbound, the unranked Washington Rob, formerly Sonic. And so he started off in losers pretty early at that event. But yeah, a lot of the top players really got pushed to their limits pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, with events like these, we're seeing that like people were starting to be on a come up before COVID really happened. And I mean, and I guess with that, like, there's like a lot of unseen talent out there that really hasn't had the chance to be shown yet, but hopefully when things do come back to land, whenever that may be, we'll see a lot of new up-and-comers who really start to make waves, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And there were so many people who I feel like were on the verge of breaking out. For me, region, like, just going down the list from north to south, Washington obviously had people like Tismatic got 9th at Redacted City, Shockbound beat Quaff, Zeddy almost beat Kevin, etc. NorCal had Potatoes Are Yum going off. The Doctor was really showing up and proving that like he was on that tier of kind of being able to challenge and take sets from people like Thunders, which was his first time ever beating him in a major. So that was everyone kind of. I stopped watching the stream, I'll be honest. I saw that was going to be grands, and I was like, okay, this is going to be a 3-0 for Thomas, because it always is.
Yeah.
And then they go to game 10, last stock, last hit. So I missed out, but he proved he could do it for the first time.
Yeah.
And then SoCal had, I think really the big breakout star from SoCal was Alshrumo, who, like I said, is no longer in SoCal.
Yeah.
But not only did he make top 12 at the reunion, but he also went ahead and got second at the next monthly afterwards, which included double eliminating Quaff and I believe taking a set from Sneeze. So
yes, that's correct.
He was definitely putting up a really strong case to be one of the best players in SoCal. And then obviously Nezo G winning what I think is probably the biggest PM event of his definitely the biggest PM event he's ever won. Maybe the biggest event in any game. I don't know about Ultimate, but for him to get that many wins over that many strong players was also really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think the lower SoCal PR and lower NorCal PR have started to step up right before COVID happened, but then it's just like the thing where we had all these locals planned out, at least in SoCal, where like I was going to run a monthly every month, and everyone was excited for it, and we saw really good talent come out, and really it was just like once the Corona era hit, we had to shift to the net play era, which I guess we can get into that as our next topic, really, what happened in the net play era. And really, I think two of the key like parts of this were like the release of P Plus 2.0, which happened during this era. So we saw like a bunch of Melee players just trying out the game for a period of time. And also how it ended was really the started slippy. Really, a lot of players shifted towards that. But I guess we can get started with how like net play events worked and really how that went on with P Plus 2.0 in the West Coast.
There were a lot of events at the beginning of quarantine, and almost everyone was playing. Pretty much everyone except for a couple of people who notably don't like net play. So, like, Fundies, for example, wasn't entering anything because he doesn't like net play. But almost everyone from NorCal, SoCal, Arizona, they were entering stuff on a regular basis, including some players we hadn't really seen for a long time. People like Jose V and I know Aeon's been playing some. We had the Melee players. IBDW especially was putting in a ton of work.
IBDW is probably one of the highlights from the Melee side because I know he kind of had it like a few sets with Kevin the Doctor, and those became pretty popular for people to see that, you know, our top P plus players can compete with the top Melee players still, because like stuff was going around like left and saying like, oh, Melee players are still so much better than PM players, and then, you know, Kevin went ahead and beat him, I think, in every set that they played on net play. So,
and also the Manny saga was probably the best thing to happen in quarantine. Manny's dumb shiny became the bane of Melee players by making Fiction absolutely hate him, and then beating IBDW in winners, including BMing him, and then BMing him entirely in losers to a point where he literally was just taunting and not playing the game and let Cody beat him. So that was entertaining, to say the absolute minimum. But it did show that, you know, especially in the matchups that the Melee players were less familiar with. I got to see this as well. I played IBDW on his stream, and PM players can definitely more than hold their own, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, the net play scene was dominated by the Doctor, who was basically entering so many events. In general, like we said, a lot of NorCal and SoCal were playing. Like from SoCal, there were events that like Nezergy, Teals, Shrumo, Sneeze, me, Blub. Like we were all entering at least some events here and there.
Yeah, he was entering for a while. I entered a couple, but I stopped pretty early on. I haven't touched PM in probably like 6 months at this point, but I entered a couple at the beginning. But I know Blood was in a lot.
Yeah, and then NorCal side, you know, we saw like their PR as well, like the Doctor, Ivan, Potatoes Are Yum,
Pinnacle,
and some of the
Old
others.
Man enters every now and then, but not very often. Those were kind of the main. NorCal didn't have as many grinders.
Yeah. On the AZ side, you know, I think Cloudburst has been grinding a lot during that era. Pineapple and Whiffy would enter a few events, Whiffy Cat, but I think he stopped pretty early on. But he did enter a few events. Was trying out his Knuckles, I remember, when P Plus 2.0 dropped. So, basically, like, there was a period right when the quarantine hit, where everyone was still playing a lot and on the net play grind, and the rise of P plus 2.0 and the fact that the Melee players were giving the game a lot of love was really driving. And then Slippy came out, and people were starting to get tired of net play. So there started to be sort of this dry era in SoCal and West Coast in general, where the TOs, for example, I was stopped running my weekly net play event because I got busy and also couldn't keep up with running net play events at the same time. So it's my event died, and that was a big event that was hosted every week. People just slowed down in entering the Wednesday night fights, which was another big event. And
that's really the main West Coast event at this point.
Yeah, and in general, I mean, we saw majority of these players who were active either start playing Slippy on the side and just messing around with that because they didn't want to deal with the net play that PM has, which objectively isn't as good as rollback. Or we saw a lot of these PM players switch to other games for the time period while they're, and I know for example, you and Teals have been playing a lot of Rivals of Aether, and in general people have been taking a break. But I think it's important to note that there were still some people who were under the radar that were grinding during this time, like Sosa, for example.
Sosa, who, like you said, hadn't been playing for a year and a half. At some point, I guess, got bored in quarantine and decided to start playing again, and he's been playing a ton recently.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in a Discord call the other day, and he's like, I've been playing 100 games of Smash a day. And I was like, how do you manage to do that? That's insane.
He's nuts. And then, I mean, Nez continues to play, but he pretty much only plays, casually with friends on stream. He doesn't really enter anything.
Yeah.
But Potatoes Are Yum has still been entering every week at Wednesday Night Fights, still grinding.
I'm pretty sure Cloudburst is also grinding, not in any events, but he has been playing.
Yeah.
And in general, I mean, we have seen some players continue to play, but it has slowed down a lot for the majority. And this was kind of really a dry era on the West Coast. Not as many events, basically only the Wednesday night fights, which still is less popular than it used to be. And so really, I kind of just, as I started to realize that, PM was starting to slow down a lot, I was like, we need something to really spice things up. And I know that a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of net play, but it's what we have right now, and we could still, keep the PM scene hype, even if it's net play matches. So that's kind of where after seeing things like SCL from the Slippy Championship League from the Melee side, I was like, why don't we have our own West Coast League? I mean, obviously we can't do the whole, distance from here to the East Coast given our net play situation, but we can at least have something reasonable for the West Coast. And I guess we can get started talking about that, but
so that brings us to the No Fundies League, which is the West Coast Project M Net Play League that will be starting on November 7th.
Yeah, so starting November 7th, and basically every other Saturday from then, we're planning to have a day where, we have an event where our top players from the West Coast really come together and just play kind of a similar format to SCL. I'll go over that format in a bit, but the idea is basically we get content from West Coast PM, we get to hear, about how players are doing, basically stuff like that. We get to see them play, and even if it's net play, it's a bunch of content that has been missing from the PM scene in general. So we get go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say the idea, I mean, obviously there's a reason that there haven't been as many PM net play events, which is that our net play is not as good as rollback, and it probably never will be. So the goal isn't, trying to figure out who's the best player on the West Coast so much as to get people talking and thinking about PM again. And to get some eyes back on a game that is still a game in a community that's still really great and really beloved. So that's the goal going into it. And we have a great lineup of players. You can see on our left, we have 16 players who will be competing in the league. And so we have some of the heaviest hitters, at least, net play warriors on the West Coast, from Arizona to NorCal to SoCal.
Yeah, and really important to highlight is I would have liked to have like everyone that we could possibly get, but we basically had to limit the number to 16 for now, and it was based not only on availability of these players to be willing to commit to doing net play events like on a consistent basis, but also like connection wise, like for example, like it's still iffy doing Arizona to NorCal connections, so we kind of had to limit as much there as we could. But we did try and get some really top quality players to, sign up. And I do think, our Division 1 is all top 50 players. At least for
Division
this first
1
week.
is actually nutty. I think both divisions are absurdly stacked. Like, if you look at Division 1, you have Sosa, who's number one player from 2018, best 3.6 player until he retired. Kevin is the Doctor's top 5. Boiling Man, Quaff, both top 20. Sneeze and Ivan were barely outside of it, and then Nez and Cloudburst were both top 40. And all those players, the second half, so, Ivan, Sneeze, Nez, OG, Cloudburst, those were all players who were top 40 and rising. They were all on the come up. And then Division 2 is still super stacked.
Coming from Division 2, we have basically players who have been regional PR'd for a long, long time, and right now...
a lot of current and former top 50. Teals is 30 right now on PM rank. Doctor was former HM. I'm on the graphic. I have actually never played Jason Waterfalls, but Jason used to be top 50. Loyal used to be top 50. Aeon used to be top 50. Dumb Shiny is top 50. And then Potatoes Are Yum and you were both really kind of set to make your breakouts this year. So
I do think that basically everyone there is either currently top 50 level or has been in the past. And then me and Potatoes are kind of like the two people that were expected to, make a breakout and hopefully reach top 50 if 2020 was an actual year. But we don't get to really see if that would pan out. But basically this event is going to kind of mimic sort of the format from SCL. I'm going to go over the exact format we had planned out and how it differs from SCL as well. So I guess I'll talk about it for a bit. And so we do have two divisions with that. These are the divisions we're starting off with for the first week. The only difference is that Saber is going to be replaced with Jason Waterfalls, which that's the main difference we're going to make to Division 2. And so we're going to have, basically the idea is that the initial matches for each event will be decided in advance based on the results of the previous event. And basically for this first event, we're going to be starting with these divisions that we see right here. And the matches will all be up on Smash GG in advance for anyone to look at. So the players can prepare for which player they're going to play, like way in advance if they want to. It's basically for the first week just going to be based off how we'd seed the normal bracket if these players were to play in a bracket. But we're going to be having stuff like the relegation from SCL. So to go over the specifics, basically everyone's going to play their first match, which is basically seed 1 of the pool will play seed 8, 2 will play 7, and so on. And the winners of these matches, if they're in Division 1, will go to a top 4 double elimination bracket. So basically, the top 4 seeds would be expected to make that, but people who get into that top 4 bracket get the advantage that for the next event, they get to pick which opponent they play who ends up in Division 1 next week. So basically, like, let's say, for example, that, like, just given how the seeding would go for the first week, like Sosa, the Doctor, Boring Man, and Ivan, for example. Let's take those 4 players. If they made it in that and placed that order in their top 4 double elimination bracket, Sosa would be the first to pick his match for the next week. Then the Doctor would be able to pick from the remaining, and then so on. And Ivan would be stuck with whoever's left, if he was last in the top 4 double elimination bracket. So the losers in Division 1 for those initial matches will go down to the relegation. And so it's kind of mimicked on the other side in Division 2, where the winners go up to the relegation while the losers go down. And I think the main difference that we have from SCL is that in the Division 2, the losers are going to stay in Division 2 no matter what. We're not going to have an open bracket or anything to try and get players into Division 2. It's more so just that we're going to try and keep the same group here. So the losers in Division 2 will be playing in their own bottom 4 bracket, is what we call it. And in the bottom 4 bracket, we're going to have, it's going to kind of work just like the top 4 bracket, where the winner of the bottom 4 bracket will be able to pick their match in Division 2 for the next week. So, for example, if I'm just going to pick randomly, like if Suvir, Potatoes Are Yum, Dumb Shiny, and Ion were in the bottom 4 bracket and placed in that order somehow, I would be able to pick from the whoever gets relegated to Division 2 what match I want first, then Potatoes would be able to pick, and so on. Now, as for the relegation itself, usually in SCL, what they do is they just have matches, like one match. We're going to try and do a 8-man double elimination bracket, and this would allow for a more accurate representation of the relegation, so that way we can have the top 4 who placed in that double elimination bracket go to Division 1, and the bottom 4 go to Division 2. So that's basically the idea of it. Hopefully it's a bit clearer on the Smash GG once we get it out there, but it also will make more sense just to see which matches are being played and checking the Smash GG. But that's the basic idea of it. So
yeah. So, I mean, like you said, the big difference really is that PM just doesn't have the capacity to run open brackets the way that SCL does. So instead of having people who do poorly in Division 2 have that threat of fully dropping out of the bracket, instead we're giving them a chance to redeem themselves and to call out, basically, who they want to play in order to, hopefully give themselves a better chance next week. So it's a format that's more designed to allow for exciting sets and for people to call each other out rather than create that tension of whether or not you'll be playing next week at all.
Yeah, I think that's the main difference, and it really becomes exciting because in those Division 2 matches, you're going to see, people who didn't win their match that last week really be able to say, okay, I want to play this matchup against this player, and they're going to, be focused on that till the next event, and we'll really be able to see some good matches happen. Same with Division 1. I mean, if the winners keep winning, they're going to be able to really show their skill and pick out who they say, you may not belong here in Division 1 with us. But overall, it'll be very exciting to see.
And we saw, you would expect, I think, if you look at that format, you would expect people to just pick, whoever wins is going to pick what they think is going to be the easiest set. But that's not always the case. If you look at SCL last week, Zane won the whole bracket, and who did he pick for his round 1 the next week? Mango. Why?
Yeah.
He thought it would be hype. So we definitely have the potential, even though we're letting people pick, we don't necessarily expect it to be people picking who they think is going to be the easiest matchup. It just might be someone they haven't played in a while or think it would be a good set.
Yeah, and I as of right now, every match in the league will be best of 5. There may be changes if we do have like certain time limitations. We'll kind of play that by ear as we go with the first event. But as of right now, everything's planned to be best of 5, and it should just make a lot of match content for the community to be able to see. I mean, in general, there hasn't been as many VODs out there for PM, so hopefully this helps put us back on the map for a lot of people who have been, watching stuff like clips of the week and being like, where's the tournament VODs? Well, here we got something close enough for you. Yeah. So I think in general, I mean, the last thing we may want to do is just basically point out that, the West Coast has been grinding, and if they're not, if they weren't grinding, they're going to be grinding because people don't want to be, that one guy who just did poorly in the league over and over and over. If, like, for example, if you lose, you're still going to be sad that you lost, and there's still going to be some sort of stakes that you want to prove yourself that you're not like just going to keep losing over and over. So people will start grinding again, and it'll be exciting to see how that works out.
Yeah, and the players who we've spoken, everyone obviously who's participating knows that they're involved, but when we first started talking about this, literally the next day, there was a group call of like 10 top PM players in the UCLA Discord, all just grinding out the game. So the hope, I think, is just having a bracket that people are invested in, and people can try to prove themselves, even though we haven't really had as many tournaments and the scene's been a little bit quiet. Will really bring back the motivation, and then that will create more people who are just looking for games and make it easier for everyone to get back into PM.
Yeah, and I think it'll be exciting to see. I mean, we'll see how things go. Hopefully everything runs smoothly and we're able to get all the content uploaded really quick, but be sure to tune in and give feedback as well on what you think about the league as a spectator if you're spectating, or even as a player if you're playing in the league. We're going to try and make this experience not only the best for the players, but also for the spectators as well, and really help with the content there. So
yeah, we'll be streaming as many sets as we can, including the top 4 bracket, over on the SoCal PM Twitch, which we'll be tweeting out as the event happens.
And I do
commentary and the VODs get uploaded and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and I do know that a lot of players are planning the stream, on their own. Like, for example, Nazir G, Potatoes Are Yum, some other people, they are planning to stream their own matches there on their own respective stream. So even if we don't have their match on the main stream, you'll be able to see it somewhere, and we'll still try and get that footage uploaded to our SoCal PM YouTube so that we can have all the matches that happen in the league up there. So, yeah, comment below what you think about the league, and basically just let us know if you're excited, if you're just what you're feeling about it. Hopefully you're excited. But, yeah, I think with that, me and Ryan will sign off here, and we look forward to seeing you guys. Ryan will be on commentary. I'll also be doing some commentary and playing as well, but we look forward to seeing you all on November 7th.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you guys enjoy the event.